Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Today we have two prominent human rights activists, two lawyers, one from Pakistan and one from Turkey, but they're also very international profiles. Uh, First of all, we have Nighat from Pakistan. She's born in Lahore, and she's a lawyer by profession. And she has set up the Digital Rights Foundation in 2012. And she's the executive director of Digital Rights Foundation. And this foundation is specifically active for women to protect themselves from online harassment, but not just that. And she's really one of the most prominent activists in this field, both regarding the gender rights aspect of it and also the digital rights part. In 2015, she was named as the Times Magazine's. She was in the Times Magazine's list of next generation leaders. And she has also many awards, like Kerem Altıparmak. They're decorated really with many awards. In Nighat's case, Atlantic Council's Digital Freedom Award is one of them. And in 2020, in one of her recent successes, so to say, Facebook appointed her as his content oversight board. I think it's more a success for Facebook because we need such high profile activists and human rights sensitive activists like Nighat to be active in social platforms like this, big companies, so that they also respect the social sensitivities in general. And also we have Kerem Altıparmak. He's very well known in Turkey, of course, and he's also has international aspects in his career, just like Nighat. And I'd like to say that he's still a part of the Ankara University Faculty of Law. I don't consider him as one of the purged academics. I always want to see the academics who are forced out of their jobs as still a part of the foundations, the organizations they were part of, and I'm sure he'll be back in Ankara University, and he will be active in academia for many years to come, because these times are going to be passing one way or the other, thanks to their activism. Kerem was the director of the Human Rights Center of Ankara University until its closure at the end of 2017. And he's active in many human rights projects outside the university, both when he was in the university and after, when he had to leave the university for a while, let's say. And it's thanks to his and Yaman Akdeniz's application that the ban of YouTube and Twitter, the Twitter block in Turkey, was overcome, because he has applied to the European Court of Human Rights, and eventually the Constitutional Court has to decide that YouTube and Twitter block has to be lifted. So I'm very glad to be the moderator of this panel, and I'd like to turn to our panelists and ask them first what prompted them to activism. How did their activism story start? So first, Nighat, let's turn to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to share panel with my esteemed panelist and you as a moderator. So with me, I believe that my personal is political, and when I started working on digital rights, I think there was a whole set of patriarchal pushes and theme behind this activism, because I hope that the the people in Turkey know that countries like Pakistan, although we are a Muslim country, but our cultures are still very different, and women in my country, they make half of the population. We are more than 200 million people in Pakistan, and half of them are women. And by training I'm a lawyer. When I started practicing law back in 2007, I found misogyny and sexism and harassment was so rampant in even in my legal fraternity. And I had to do some personal cases with regard to, for instance, the custody of my son. And I, as a lawyer, faced so much discrimination. That's prompted me that even if I'm a lawyer and an empowered woman, I know what my legal rights are. Just imagine the women who know about the rights, but they just cannot do anything because of the male dominance in the society, or the patriarchy, where usually especially the middle class or the lower middle class families, women are mostly dependent on men. Either they are fathers or brothers or husbands or sons, and most of the time the decisions about their lives or about other things, they just cannot take those decisions because of lack of agency over their own bodies. So I think that's something that pushed me to do something more, not just my own legal practice, but largely for the society. And digital rights, I found a new area where even in my case, I had my family, especially the male members of my family, didn't allow me to access a mobile phone and to own one. And I always wondered that why is it my brother who absolutely had no problem to have a phone or access an internet, but why is it always me? And I think that sort of pushed me to work on digital rights from the perspective of women and gender and marginalized communities in Pakistan.
And Kerem, how is your case? Why digital rights? Why activism?
I think my story started at a relative good days in Turkey. When I did finish my PhD in 2002, there were a lot of projects going on at the universities, and most of those projects were conducted with state authorities because EU was funding Turkish universities to work with the state authorities to train public officials in the human rights field. But I was thinking even at that time that human rights should be worked with civil society rather than the state authorities. And I tried to convene people from civil society at the university with my colleagues, of course, and we discussed how to work together. And they suggested that they needed some training for human rights activists working in the fields. As you know, Turkey has a very deep tradition in human rights activism. And we realized that academy can be a bridge for civil society and the knowledge of human rights, theory and practice. So I started from the very beginning of my academic career to work with civil society. And in time, I approached to the civil society part and put a distance with the academy, which at the end led me to leave the university. But the main idea was to use the theoretical information in practice. And in the middle of somewhere of this story, one of the laws that we will be talking today, Law 5651, passed from the parliament, and Human Rights Joint Platform, which I've worked with for a very long time, asked me to write a report. And I knew at that time Yaman, my colleague Yaman Akdeniz, was working on this, and I proposed him to write, and he said that, okay, I know the digital rights well, but you know the local law well, so maybe we should do it together. So it started in 2007. with the entrance into law 5651. And since then, the government's pressure on internet and freedom of expression have gradually increased. So I couldn't leave this digital activism thing, and we have been challenging to the decisions of blocking restrictions ever since then. So my decision to be a human rights activist was a intended decision, but digital rights activist was a coincidence as a result of this first decision, I guess.
As you were talking, Kerem, I was reminded how actually law can never be divorced from real life, the real context situations. I mean, all academia or all academic work is related to real life. But in case of law, you have to be really involved with cases and what's happening in life in general, what's happening in the society, what's happening in people's lives. So, Nighat, I'll turn to you now. Please give us the perspective from Pakistan, but not just Pakistan itself, which is a very interesting case in itself as a country, but also the region in general, South Asia. How are digital rights utilized? How they cannot be utilized and secured? What are the threats that you're facing? From which parties are you facing these threats? Please give us the perspective from your region and your country.
Right. So in Pakistan, I would say the history, so the digital rights is something that is not new, specifically from my point of view, or the digital rights activists who have been working for a free, safe, and open internet in the country for the last almost 10 years, and maybe more than that. But I would say that the history of censorship is not really new. In 2006, when I was just starting my legal practice, there was a ban on Blogspot. And that was a medium where people were writing their blogs. It was a new medium. Internet was, like pretty new, and not many people had access to it. So only those people who were privileged or, knew how to write in English, and so they had access to the Blogspot. That was banned in the during the dictatorship of Musharraf. And so that was the time where first time civil society activists, digital rights activists, they showed their concern and they went to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. But then we saw the emergence of laws like Prevention of Electronic Crimes Ordinance. Again, that was introduced by a dictator. And even after the dictatorship was ended, another government, the democratic government, more or less worked on the similar law, and now we have Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, which was enacted in 2016. And due to these, we have seen that the censorship has been happening in the online spaces in a more arbitrary way, in a more ad hoc way by the regulatory body, which is called Pakistan Telecommunication Authority. And there is absolutely no process that they followed in the past. But then they, made all these laws in the name of protecting people against online harassment or against cybercrime. And then we saw that now there is a legal cover to censor online content in the name of national security, in the name of religion, in the name of morality, in the name of you name it. There is a long list. So this is the kind of censorship situation that we see. But at the same time, I feel that when I started working on digital rights, not many people knew about their rights. They had no idea that the same civil liberties that are enshrined in our Pakistani constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of access to information, freedom of association and assembly, right to privacy, all these fundamental rights equally apply in the online spaces as well. And most of the time people used to take internet as an entertainment space, or not really seeing it as a tool or a space where they can exercise their rights. um, but now I think it's because of lots of people who have been raising their voice against blocking and censorship, against surveillance technologies, against malware attacks that usually activists, journalists, and different vulnerable communities face. There is an education and awareness where people have started talking about their safe online spaces, or when their rights are curbed in the online spaces. And I'll talk more about the law because I know that I also have a example from Turkish law. But it's not just Pakistan. What we see even in Bangladesh, there is Digital Security Act. And now the name is digital security, meaning you are providing a digital security to the citizens of your country. But that the objective of that law is not actually protecting people online, but violating their fundamental rights in the online spaces and prosecuting people in the name of a lot of other exceptions that are mentioned in that law. The same is the case with the other other jurisdictions like Nepal, like Sri Lanka, like India. And I would say this is like a global trend where governments are coming up with all these new laws in the name of protecting data, in the name of protecting citizens, or protecting women against harassment. But the actual intention is not protection. The actual intention is something else, which we usually see when the journalists are being arrested under the online cyber laws, or online defamation or stuff like that, when they use from those laws. So yeah, I mean, this is the current state where the many laws are being introduced, and citizens are really not up to the speed, or really don't know how these laws are being misused against them. And not just citizens, but I would say also judiciary is not really aware, and the other stakeholders, how to understand these laws, how to set a good precedent, or define a good jurisprudence when it comes to these laws. Only the investigation agency or the law enforcement agency really know how to use those laws, and most of the time without procedures and processes and accountability and oversight.
Nighat, I'm hearing many of the echoes that of Turkey when as you're speaking, because actually our cases are not worlds apart, or the region in general. South Asian cases are not so much distant to Turkey. Before turning to Kerem, though, I want to ask you something else, because we are always talking about the government, but how about the other parties? For example, how are the social media companies a partner in trying to prevent the shrinking of digital rights space, or are they a hindrance? Are they causing other obstacles for utilizing securing of digital rights? How do you assess their role?
So I think in countries, I think in countries like ours, we all have issues with the social media companies. I'm sitting on Facebook Independent Oversight Board, and the board is actually there to hold Facebook accountable. And I think there are so many digital rights activists, including myself, who have been criticizing these companies because of their roles. I think one challenge that I see in my country, and I think that sort of applies to all other countries where rule of law is not really strong, companies speak to the government and the regulatory bodies without being transparent. So, for instance, we see this in Pakistan. Many companies speak regularly to the government, but we really don't know the detail, that what kind of meetings that they are having, what kind of agreements they are making. A small example is that TikTok, for instance, was banned in Pakistan a few weeks ago, and the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority really didn't follow the law, and just banned TikTok because they said that, oh, we have been receiving lots of complaints that the content on TikTok is immoral and obscene and is against the Islamic values of our society. So they just decided to block it. And then TikTok administration, they started talking to Pakistani regulators, and then one fine day, the regulatory body announced that they are lifting the ban on TikTok. So these kind of actions and decisions make you very doubtful about the role of different companies, that what kind of things that they are agreeing on with the government bodies, right? So I see that we really need to keep pushing these companies for being more transparent. They cannot simply do the same thing in Europe, right? They cannot do the same thing in US and UK. They know that they can get away with these kind of things in our countries because the users who actually should have the actual power doesn't have that power and doesn't have the knowledge and awareness. So the role of social media companies, I see it has always been problematic in countries like ours, but I see that's why our work is very important, to keep pushing not just the government but also social media companies, and keep holding them accountable. Of course, it adds a lot into our free labor that we do all the time.
And I also want to ask you the last question, then turn to Kerem. Defamation is being an issue in Turkey recently. How are the religious bodies in general, or organizations or associations, sects, whatever, how are they affecting your work? Are they taking you as the enemy, or is it a big problem to have to deal with them? How is the situation?
To be very honest, I am very cautious when I'm online. I think I'm more aware about the cyber defamation laws, and they are very. I have seen lots of cases and examples, and even journalists who reach out to us and activists who reach out to us very regularly, who face cyber criminal defamation. So, as a woman facing rape threats and all kind of abuse and hate speech is such a norm. It has become a normal thing for activists like myself and several other women journalists who have been facing a lot of abuse and hate speech online. But I would say that the defamation is something that lots of other activists and journalists are facing. And since the law, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes law, the cybercrime law that I was talking about earlier, is actually weaponized against journalists and activists, especially this particular provision around criminal defamation. And it makes me wonder, and also other digital rights activists have been pushing that when you have a civil defamation in the country and you have a criminal defamation in the penal code, what is the need of making another defamation law in the cybercrime law, right? But I think these kind of provisions basically tell you that powerful bodies and actors want to exert more power, and that's why these provisions are added into different other laws to regulate not only content but regulate people online. So I would say that I also self-censor myself, and I have seen lots of other women self-censor themselves online, just because we don't want to face, defamation, not just in the cybercrime law, but also in the Pakistan Penal Code and the other laws that covers defamation.
Don't worry, Nighat, you're not the only one self-censoring. I myself undergo these troubles every day, let's say. We always weigh what to say, what not to say, but we still try to carry on with speaking out. Kerem, so you've been very active with the new internet law in Turkey. It's not becoming so new. It's not so new anymore, though we are getting used to it. It's becoming a part of our lives. It has become instantly a part of our lives. I'm sure you're going to tell the story, but it's from Nighat. We heard, and it's our case in Turkey too, that digital rights is not just about the digital sphere, the online sphere, but they involve all rights, actually, all the sphere of freedom of expression, all rights and freedoms. So please do tell us about how the issue evolved in Turkey, both regarding the new internet law, and there were also new developments. Some fines were imposed on the social media companies recently. I myself don't know much about it due to the hectic agenda that's going on. So I'm sure our audience will be interested in that. But also, really, do give us the general perspective. What has been happening in Turkey?
Okay, we keep saying new. By the way, nothing is new in Turkey. We enacted a law, then amended in numerous times, and one of those laws is internet law, and it entered into force in 2007. So relatively old, considering how digital life has grown since then. But I think we need to look at the background to understand why the law was enacted at that time and why it has been amended several times. Until 2007, internet was not that important for the government. The government became into power in 2002. And in the first 5 years, the main idea was to control state apparatus plus media and other stuff. So the government was targeting the printed media and the visual media, and internet's effect in our lives were limited at that time. But in 2007, there were very important political developments, including the election of a new president. The government became powerful enough to control all state institutions. Only the exception was judiciary, and I'll come to that in 2007. And at that year, the law on internet 5651 passed from the parliament. In a very similar way, the government argued that the target of the legislation was to protect children. So the obscenity was at the heart of the story at the beginning. They claimed that they would protect children against obscenity and other crimes. So in the original form, there was only one article about blocking content on the internet. It was Article 8. And according to Article 8, there's a list of crimes. If there is suspicion, strong suspicion that crime has been committed, then a blocking order might be delivered by a criminal peace court. At that time, it was criminal peace court, not criminal peace judge. However, it didn't stop there. You can follow the Turkish political history from the internet law. In 2014, two new provisions were added to the law, three different provisions. One of them has not been used a lot, so we don't know it very well, but two others have been used very frequently. In 2014, following Gezi events and then the probe allegations against the government, corruption allegations against the government inserted a new provision in the law, Article 9. This claims to be protecting individual rights. Why it came in 2014? You might remember at the end of 2013, there was a clash between the Gülenists and the government, and a lot of recordings belong to the ministers. Their families have been released through social media. So the government, just months after this development, inserted a new provision and gave power to the criminal peace judges to block websites or URLs when a personal right is violated. The result is that almost anything critical against the government now can be categorized as breaching personal rights. For instance, if you report the ministers' transactions in Channel Istanbul, this is a new project announced by the president. Close to Istanbul, there will be a huge channel connecting Black Sea to the Marmara Sea, and one of the ministers bought some assets next to this project because he knew that there will be that project, and this was reported by some media. When it was, at the moment, it's impossible to report this in conventional media in Turkey, so the alternative media made news about this, and the minister applied to the criminal peace judge and argued that this reporting violated his personal rights. He didn't say that, no, I didn't buy anything, but he only said that this violated my personal rights. So this was the first amendment in the law, first important amendment. Secondly, in 2015, this time Article 8A was inserted to the same law, and this is about banning orders to protect national security, public order, prevention of crime. Why did it happen? There were first Gezi events, then armed clashes in the Kurdish region. So the government decided to block everything on the ground that's news concerning these clashes and serious human rights violations, breach public order. And with this new provision, thousands of news reports as well as websites have been blocked. Finally, the new amendment, why they needed this last amendment. The criminal peace judge system created in 2014 guarantees the government's request to be decided by the criminal system. However, if you don't comply with the decision, what's going to happen? Personally, if you don't comply, you're in trouble. But if the company is not located in Turkey, as in the case of social media companies, then it's impossible to force them to implement those decisions delivered by criminal peace judges. So the government realized at one point they had bargains, as Nighat said, with Twitter and Facebook, and they got a lot from them. But Turkey, you can follow from the Twitter's transparency reports, is the leading country in blocking content in the world. At one point, Twitter decided not to implement at least some of those decisions. So you get decisions from criminal peace judges, but you can't get at least all be implemented by the criminal peace judges. So the government decided to control the social media as a last attempt to control whole information flowing in the country by requiring those companies to appoint a representative in Turkey. So the first reason is that to get decisions against social media companies to be implemented. But secondly, the government also asks those companies to localize their data, which will mean that when an investigation is conducted against a person, they will go and ask to the social media company to inform Turkish authorities about the information about the person who is under investigation. This is so critical and dangerous. If those companies decide to appoint a representative in Turkey, and if they localize their data in Turkey, the government will be able to reach all information about social media users, including those who want to stay anonymous. The idea is that to catch everyone, not only using social media openly, but also who are critical but anonymous on social media.
How about this recent fine imposed on the social media companies? There was a talk of that 10 million lira fine was imposed. It's hefty by international standards as well. I think it's $1 million per company. Is it? My math.
Million euro, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
This is, I mean, if it was only 1 million euro, as you're right, that wouldn't be that important for those companies. However, new sanctions will follow this, as you know. The law said after entry into force of that provision that requires companies to appoint a representative in Turkey, it says that for the first month, if they don't appoint, then 10 million Turkish lira will be imposed. Then in the following months, this will be 30 million Turkish liras, 3 million euros. Then, if they do not comply with this second sanction, third one is prohibition of advertisement on those social media companies. You won't be able to advertise on Facebook, Twitter, if they don't appoint a representative in Turkey. This sanction will last for 3 months, and at the end of 3 months, the traffic of those websites will be squeezed up to 50%. And in May 2021, it will be 90% banned squeeze, which means that if those companies do not appoint representatives in Turkey, in May, we won't be able to access Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and others. And although Facebook didn't make an official statement about this, it is known, and Facebook did not deny this, it's known that they will not appoint. I guess this is a secret, no statement or rumor is available about Twitter, but Twitter, I guess, wouldn't appoint representative as well. This will mean that if nothing changes until May, all leading social media networks won't be available in Turkey next year this time. My expectation is that the government do not want to retreat from its position. But I think to overcome this crisis, they will ask Constitutional Court to annul the new provision. In this way, they will blame the Constitutional Court, while on the other hand, social media companies will continue to operate in Turkey. But this is not because of my legal capacity. This is just a conspiracy theory that I'm producing now.
I'll come back to you, Kerem, but I'll just want to return to Nighat to ask, is there a similar situation like this with social media companies in Pakistan or the region? Is there a clash of wills in that sense, you think? Or is there a threat that also in Pakistan or the region, such companies will be forced out of business to be there because of their deal relationship status complicated with the government?
So when Karim was talking about this, I was just smiling because that's the similar situation in Pakistan. There is this new regulation, rules basically, which is called Citizen Protection Against Online Harms rules. And under these rules, the rules are made under the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act that I mentioned before. And these rules give power to the regulatory body, which is Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, to push companies to open up their offices in Pakistan within 90 days of the notification of these rules, and also appoint their focal person in Pakistan. So that means that these social media companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, TikTok, all these companies, they have to have an office in Pakistan. In case they fail to do so, their access to their platforms will be shut down. Then this is nothing new, although the rule, like putting them in rules, is actually new, that they are now making it this entire framework into a legislative framework. But even before that, the government of Pakistan banned YouTube for 3 years in Pakistan because of the blasphemy, so the users of the internet users didn't have access to such a big platform like YouTube for 3 years. So which sort of shows and very clearly tells us that blocking these platforms is actually not an issue for the government. And introduction of such rules are actually telling these companies or sort of threatening them that if you won't abide by our local laws or won't listen to us, then just face the consequences. And I think like Turkey, I highly doubt that in absence of the data protection law or any other privacy protections, pushing companies to open up their offices here, and we know that there is a practice of asking these companies for users' data or taking down content, and there like other censorship that has been taking place around sensitive actors in Pakistan. So there is a massive fear among stakeholders that including social media companies, who by the way also sent an open letter to the Prime Minister of Pakistan through their coalition, which is Asia Internet Coalition, and showed their concern that the process around making such rules it's very problematic, because it was first not consultative, and the kind of conditions and terms that they are pushing these companies to follow are actually impractical. But we really don't know how these companies will. We have still heard that that these rules are notified, but nothing has happened. Like not many people have seen the copy. While I was like listening to Kerem, I just looked into internet and found the copy on Ministry of IT's website. So we don't know the future of these of such actions that the government is taking, but for sure we are moving towards the same direction that that Turkey has. Also, the rules basically talk about that the servers will be also in Pakistan, so there will be like local servers here, while the company will set up its office here. So just imagine where the journalists are being prosecuted under the cybercrime law very regularly and often. What kind of repercussions actions will like bring specifically around such rules and regulations and legislations? Yeah.
I want to ask you both also just quickly, is there a difference between, so to say, Western companies and TikTok, for example? Is there a difference in the government's treatment of these companies, also considering international relations aspects of the issue? And also, how are the companies behaving themselves? Does a Chinese company like TikTok do something completely different than, for example, Twitter, Facebook, etc.? So, Kerem, first you.
First of all, it's really interesting to listen to Nighat, because I know that autocratic regimes are transferring know-how on how to restrict freedom of expression. And Turkey is very good in this field, in the field of digital rights, how to restrict digital rights. And I think this is one of the reasons that those companies do not want to appoint representatives in Turkey, because if they do so, they will have to do the same thing everywhere. Then the Twitter and YouTube will lose all their meaning. And I think I can come to your question, Sezin, from here. In Turkey, the difference between different social media platforms is that whether they spread political content or not. I think this is the answer. And second, the point is whether those companies comply with the request of the government. Twitter rejected more requests from the government than Facebook. So until this last amendment, the relation between the government and the Facebook was quite reasonable and fine for the government. But I know that the policy of Facebook changed, and this is one of the results. Facebook now is adopting a more pro-human rights position, and that's why they don't want to come. But when it comes to TikTok, I've been working in this field for a very long time, but I haven't heard a lot of complaints about TikTok from the government side. I'm sure that there have been private conflicts between parties because of the content shared in TikTok. But the government does not complain a lot. But the law says that if you have more than 1 million members, then you have to appoint a representative. This means that TikTok will have to do so. I don't know why TikTok hasn't done this so far. I haven't heard any explanation statement from TikTok on this. But I guess that their reason might be different than Facebook and Twitter, which is more freedom of expression based arguments. But as I said, I don't know about TikTok.
And Nighat, we heard that TikTok is facing its own troubles in Pakistan. How about there? Are they behaving indifferently? How are their relations? How are their relations with the government?
So this is interesting because when we thought Pakistan and China they are very close in terms of politics, and like both countries call each other brother countries. So does, by the way, Turkey and Pakistan also. And when the TikTok was banned, I was expecting that the Chinese government might raise eyebrows or raise their concerns, but nothing happened at the political end. While the one thing that I saw, that since TikTok is a platform which is being used more by the working class, or the class that is not on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, or cannot access those platforms because of maybe the language issue or the other barriers, TikTok sort of provided that space to the working class in Pakistan. And there has been like 43 million downloads in Pakistan so far when the TikTok was banned. And no, so we really didn't see the political sort of climate getting intense or anything, but we saw that TikTok has been they were in conversation with the government. And different TikTok one TikTok user and some other people also went to the high courts and challenged the ban. But in the meanwhile, we heard from TikTok and the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority that they are lifting the ban after TikTok agreed that they will actively look for obscene and immoral content on their platform. But that was a very general statement. You see, when I say the transparency of these companies, it doesn't only mean that how they and who they are to decide immoral and obscene for me, right? uh, how the few people sitting in the regulatory body decide what the millions of people should watch on such platform. In country like Pakistan, like a woman wearing jeans can be obscene for some people, or a woman walking on the road can be obscene and immoral for some people. So I think this is a very gray area, and I have a lot of reservation when companies agree to such conditions, and on what basis they will be moderating the content. And I think that's the same question that goes to TikTok, but politically no one raised any question. And I think maybe the Chinese government raised their concern, but maybe that's all behind the closed doors. Nothing appeared on media. So yeah, I mean, this is that's how the TikTok was unbanned in Pakistan, which I feel is not. It actually set a bad precedent, because it allowed the regulatory body to arbitrarily ban the app, and then again arbitrarily unban the app. I mean, why you are not following the process, or where is the process? Or it's also unconstitutional that a body decide that this is obscene and immoral on the behalf of millions of users.
Kerem, now I'll turn to you and follow up on what you were talking about. Our panel is about shrinking spaces, and in Turkey we have been witnessing a shrinking of space in terms of freedoms and rights, and an unprecedented scale, according to some human rights activists. So, how do you think the digital rights in general are tying to all other freedom of expression issues in Turkey, the other cases of journalists in jail, human rights activists in jail, politicians in jail, and the list goes on, so and so forth. Yeah. So please enlighten us.
I think the rights on digital sphere cannot be divorced from the main human rights problems in Turkey, starting from rule of law and independent and impartiality of judiciary. Let me explain with a basic example. I mentioned criminal peace judges. Blocking orders are being given by criminal peace judges. And this new criminal peace judge system was created in 2014. And when a criminal peace judge decides to ban a website, that decision can only go to the next criminal peace judge. Why this is important? There are only 10 criminal peace judges in Ankara. They can detain anyone they want. They can block any website they want. So, for instance, about the application of Article 8A of the Internet law, this is the one about public order, national security. Only one judge in Gölbaşı, Ankara, Gölbaşı is a sub-province of Ankara, decided thousands of web blocked in Turkey. Why Gölbaşı? Because the telecommunication order was next to Gölbaşı, and there was just one criminal peace judge there. And this criminal peace judge has not rejected a single request coming from the public authorities. We're talking about tens of thousands of URLs, not in a single one that person decided that, no, okay, this doesn't breach public order. So that's why rights on digital platforms are connected to main human rights issues in Turkey. And secondly, we're talking about shrinking space for civil society. Civil society keeps creating its own places, and mostly on internet and digital arena. If you can't get your printed media, you can create alternative media digital portals like Duvar, like Diken, like Biyanet, and others. So they have become very active in Turkey. And social media and the rise of using social media in Turkey helped them to grow. People turn to those alternative news sources instead of conventional media sources to learn the truth. So now if you, on the one hand, block news of those alternative media sources, and on the other hand, you prosecute journalists for what they write on those digital platforms, then inevitably the digital sphere created by civil society is also being shrinked. And at the moment, we don't know how to overcome this. When I raise my concerns about this, a lot of friends or citizens says that, okay, we will find technical ways to overcome this problem. Yes, we can overcome some of this by using VPN and other tools, but Turkey is an 83 million population country, and those alternative media sources are reaching a lot of people. Not all of them will be able to reach and access to those alternative media sources when the government keeps imposing new measures and sanctions over them. So I think we cannot separate these criminal measures against journalists from administrative measures imposed on digital media. And of course, all of them should be connected to the main problem, rule of law and independent and impartial judiciary in Turkey.
Now I want to turn to Nighat and talk about a very important area in digital rights and in freedoms and rights in general, the gender side of the story. You've been working, you've been focusing on preventing harassment of women and those who are suffering from their gender identity online. So please tell us about your work and what you're facing in Pakistan and globally in general. How are the women suffering specifically from curbing, shrinking of space of their digital rights, and also not just women, but all those who are having problems because of their gender identity.
So, as I said in the beginning, that main motivation behind my work was to focus on digital rights from the gender lens, and that's why I guess a lot of women, slowly and gradually, when the access to internet and information and communication technology increased in Pakistan, women also started getting access. Though it was very difficult when I started working back in 2005, 2006, it was not easy for women to get access to mobile phone or internet. It was always seen as with suspicion that, oh, why she needs a mobile phone, why she wants to use an internet, why she wants to be on social media. Before Facebook, we had Orkut, which was really famous, and I remember that I used to use Orkut while hiding from my family. So it was the case, and I was a lawyer. So and just imagine, the women who were, who belonged to not really educated progressive families. It was a huge issue for them to access mobile phone or internet. Slowly and gradually the trend changed, and now we see that women also have access, but still there is a huge gender digital divide in Pakistan. In urban areas, especially in cities, it's not a taboo anymore. But in rural areas, which is 70% of Pakistan's population, women still, they are not really allowed to own mobile phone. Not all women. Either these are, older women in the family, or mostly they cannot buy a SIM card in their own name. So the male elder basically buy a SIM card on their national ID card copy. So there's even their numbers are in the name of their male elders in the family. And when they use online spaces, so because there is this notion, the social norm in that if you are not supposed to use online spaces. That's why when they face harassment or any kind of hate speech or violence, they do not or cannot reach out to their immediate support system, their families, or the people that they sort of, the friends, maybe the people in the close circle, because the first thing that they do is to victim blame them, that, oh, why you did that, why you posted that picture, why you were using, why you started talking to such and such person. There was no need at all. So when they victim blame, that's where women take a step back, and they really don't know how to deal with that. It's changing slowly and gradually, but one form of violence that I see is where it's pervasive in our culture, that is blackmailing women over their intimate images and videos. Or dissemination of non-consensual use of intimate images, which is called NCUI. And that's very common in Pakistan, because perpetrators who blackmail women over these images, they know that these women have nowhere to go. They cannot seek support, because if they would do, people will blame them that, oh, why at first place you sent this picture to such person, so that means you were in illicit relationship with that person. Which sometimes, especially in far-flung areas or tribal areas, it leads to honor kill that woman. So honor killing is another issue which is very common in Pakistan, and women are being killed in the name of honor because of such strange and weird reasons. The honor of the entire family is connected to our bodies. So that similar thing goes on to internet space and the usage of our mobile phone. Last year, 3 women were killed in the tribal areas of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa because somebody filmed them on their from their mobile phone while they were just laughing. And this is just, like, even the like thought of it, that women were laughing and someone made their video on their mobile phone and disseminated that video in the village, which, that their respective tribe thought that it's these women have damaged the honor of the tribe, so they killed them. And few years ago, a few women were just clapping, in a wedding, in a room, and their male relative made a video. The women were not even aware that, someone was making their video, and that video was also disseminated from one mobile to another mobile phone in that village, and again those women were killed, and the men also. So see, there are like different aspects of and the vulnerabilities of women using internet and mobile phones in the rural areas and then in the areas. And I think the fear of being victim blame and slut shame is something that hold them back to reach out to the support system. So that's why we started Cyber Harassment Helpline in Pakistan in 2016. And the idea was that not every person, not just women, but also non-binary people who do not want to, identify with any gender, and sexual minorities and religious minorities, they do not want to reach out to the authorities because first they fear that their data might being misused, and the second thing is that they don't even have a support system to, like, go with them to these authorities and follow up with the cases. The justice system, the criminal justice system, is really broken, especially for the vulnerable and marginalized groups. Not every person has a capacity and privilege to follow up with the cases for years and years. So what they do is they just try to find other ways to deal with such kind of abuse and hate speech and harassment and blasphemy allegations through different other means, and not through legislation or through the investigative agency. So the Cyber Harassment Helpline basically does this work. It's a confidential helpline where anyone can call us. We didn't specify it just to the activists, journalists, or religious minorities or sexual minorities, but to anyone, where we have seen that even in this patriarchal society, men are also abused so much, and they cannot even talk to anyone because the whole concept of masculinity is so toxic and so strong that they don't even think that they don't want to reach out to anyone, because then the norms around masculinity sort of doesn't really fulfill a macho man in our society. So we receive lots of complaints, and we support them through tell them like what are the legal options available to them, but also tell them like what are the digital security tips that they can follow, and then make their online experiences safer. And the third thing is mental health counseling. It's so important to bring people into their stable mental state when they reach out to us. Sometimes they are panicked, and they're like people who are in the past who were suicidal, especially younger women. They wanted to commit suicide, and they reached out to us that you guys are our last hope, and if you can support me, just tell me what I should do. I want this content to be removed from social media platform, or I want this blackmailing to be ended. And I think for us, the first thing is to bring them into a stable mental state where they can make informed decisions. But it also it has given us so much information and knowledge, and made us realize the gaps in the law, the gaps in the investigation agencies work, the social media companies, why it's not working, their reporting mechanisms are not working in our context. What are the things that they can do? So they're like these things that we are addressing through the Cyber Harassment Helpline. But I would say that vulnerable and marginalized communities, including young women and girls. Every single day on internet is a, it's not normal for them. Their experiences are very different than the male internet users. The sexualized and gendered nature of attacks make it more difficult for them to use online spaces freely.
Kerem, do you think that all these issues that about gender that Nighat is talking about resonates with Turkey? In Turkey, for example, the high-profile murder cases, which became high-profile because they were discussed a lot in the social sphere, violence against women, such cases have become an issue. Specifically because of the online sphere, in my view, how do you assess that? Are the digital platforms advancing women's rights in Turkey, or in general gender rights, or is it the other way around?
I mean, in this field, digital rights mirrors what we have in other fields of the life. So, on the one hand, yes, digital platforms provide an excellent place to organize women's rights groups to help each other. Like in Pakistan, social media and digital platforms sometimes save the life. But on the other hand, yes, it gives a lot of opportunity for blackmailing, harassing women and other gender identities. We know that LGBTI groups are under serious threat in Turkey. This includes social media. If you openly talk about your sexual identity, then you might be attacked for this. You might be following a very well-known public figure, Taylor, who left the country. I forgot his name. Anyway,
Barbaros Şansal.
Barbaros Şansal. But Barbaros Şansal doesn't hide his gender identity, and he shares how this identity being perceived by people, and he's being insulted, threatened by people. And it's interesting to see that this is merged with his political choices. He's known as a government critic, and his gender identity is being used to insult someone who is acting against the government. So one of the problems in Turkey is that this all insults, threatening, blackmailing thing is working as a one-way traffic. If you're a pro-government person, you can say anything, and if you are brought to judicial authorities, then those words are seen as freedom of expression. But if you are against the government, you say the same thing, then you find yourself in trouble. You know that around 100,000 people have been investigated for insulting to presidents, and in more than 30,000 cases, prosecutors initiated criminal cases after those investigations. And to the best of my mind, the president has never lost a single case for criminal or civil courts. He's always right. But when he says something and he's sued, then whatever he says, it is seen as a freedom of expression. It happened recently in the case of Baskın Oran versus Süleyman Soylu. You might remember Baskın Oran complained about the wordings used against him by the Minister of Interior. This was a civil case, not a criminal one. But the court said that Süleyman Soylu had freedom of expression to say everything. So it depends who you are. If you are a pro-government person, you are attacked as a woman, then your rights might be protected. But if you are voicing the demands of minority groups, even when you are using your democratic rights to criticize someone, it might be seen as a threat, as a insult, defamation, and so on. So I think there are similarities between Pakistan and Turkey about this gender issues, but I think we need to add, and I guess it's also it might also be similar in Pakistan. A different line should be added to this. This is the political position or ethnic identity or the religious identity of the person, in addition to the gender identity. A very good example, again, is Markar Esayan, an Armenian Turkish. He was the MP of the ruling party. And when he died, he was respected and he was honored by pro-government people as well as digital media users. But another Armenian MP, Armenian origin MP, Garo Paylan, is receiving threats, insults, everything daily basis. And as far as I know, no one has been prosecuted so far for threatening Garo Paylan on internet. So this is a one-way traffic that I call.
I also want to ask you how this corona crisis is affecting us in the digital sphere in general, in digital rights arena. We are all online now. Are digital rights becoming more prominent, more emphasized, and therefore more attacked in our contemporary times? How did the coronavirus affect your work personally, and also the digital rights area in general? For example, are there also good examples in activism? Nighat, you first.
All right. Yeah. So I think COVID brought some challenges and also opportunities in a way that a lot of people who were working from their offices, I think for some it became a little easier to work online, but at the same time I think people who have children and they also started their online classes, I think it became a real issue. But I think the main issue that we saw emerged during lockdown especially was the digital divide and the gender digital divide. So when schools, colleges, universities, offices were closed, people from different villages or towns or different provinces, they went back to their native cities, and which sort of and especially students, when they went back to their villages and towns, they were forced to take online classes, and they couldn't because in their respective villages and areas internet was not available. And it was not always the issue of accessibility, but also there were some areas, specifically in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the tribal areas, where the internet is blocked. There are shutdowns in the name of national security, or because the region has a conflict. So we saw different, like, students, not just male students but also women students in some parts of Balochistan, in some parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They started protesting, saying the Higher Education Commission and their respective universities to stop online classes because they don't have access. Their demands, and we as a digital rights organization issued a set of demands to the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, addressing the president, the prime minister, that how they can address the issues around accessibility of internet during COVID. It was not just the issue around education, but also, people in the villages absolutely had no idea what corona is. A lot of many campaigns, awareness raising campaigns that they were doing around COVID were on social media. So when those people who do not even have access to internet, how they can even know what exactly corona is and how they can deal with the virus, and how they can take care of their loved ones. And it's not just the lack of internet, but because in these villages the power outages take place probably like 20 hours out of 24/7, 24 hours. So you just see they don't have electricity, they don't have internet. So it's so these were the challenges that we sort of thought as an organization and the other digital rights activists, that COVID is also an opportunity to make government realize that the gender divide, the digital divide, and the gender digital divide, it was always there. It's now due to COVID that people are raising their voice and protesting. For me, I think it actually increased my work a lot. I feel like I have no personal life. I'm working all the time. And in there are like several civil society organizations and human rights groups who it was a new normal for them. For us as a digital rights organization, using online spaces for meetings and sessions was really not new. But for other traditional human rights organizations, it was a challenge for them to move on to online spaces and then do their all work on internet. So we also as an organization started building their capacity and sharing our practices and knowledge and skills, that how they can use online spaces and continue their work through internet. So yeah, I feel that there are like these challenges that arose during lockdown and still are there, by the way. But also I saw that how the COVID tracing apps, while they were popular in other Western countries, in Pakistan also there was a tracing app that was being introduced by the government, and we raised our concerns around the lack of privacy and data protection of such an app. So we don't really know like how they dealt with the issues around app, but a lot of people who were contracting COVID during that time, their friends and their relatives and people around them started getting messages from the government that, oh, you might have come across a COVID positive patient, so just be careful. And it freaked them out, and they were like, how they do know that there is a COVID positive person around me? And that's where we raised like questions to the government, that why they didn't announce how they are collecting data, and how they are collecting data of not just the COVID positive patient but also like people around them. So it was a little scary, but I think the kind of steps that the government took and the app that they introduced, I feel that it's also an attack on the right to privacy, where the data protection is actually not there at all, and the respect to right to privacy, especially by public bodies, it's not a norm. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how we dealt with the lockdown. But I mean, now we are again in the second wave, so not sure like how the respect to digital rights. I don't see it during lockdown, but I saw that the government was very active in terms of blocking the apps. It wasn't just TikTok was black. There was this gaming app, PUBG. It is called PUBG in Pakistan. So it was also banned during COVID. And then all the online harms rules that I mentioned were also introduced in during the same lockdown. So you see that the government was pretty active in enacting all these rules and introducing such things and banning apps and etc. instead of addressing the issue of digital divide in the country.
Kerem, how about our case, your case?
I'll start with my case. The good thing is I'm traveling less. This is good part of it. But the bad part of it is that my dishwasher is working twice a day. I have 2 kids at home, and we keep cooking and eating at home. This is tiring for everyone, I guess. Plus, this sitting and talking next to a computer is a tiring thing. We do it for meetings, for conferences, and I feel really tired at the end of the day. I couldn't get used to this. When we come to the human rights issues, I want to touch. I share what already said by Nighat, so I will look at less digital issues on human rights in Turkey, how they have been affected from Corona. First of all, the governments, even before this pandemic, the government was arbitrarily restricting freedom of expression and other basic rights. However, using non-legal methods has become a rule during pandemic. What I mean by that, rather than relying on acts of parliament, the government started to use circulars stated by Ministry of Interior. And as you know, just before midnight, 2 hours before midnight, Ministry of Interior announced that there will be a curfew for 2 days. And he did it with a circular without any legal basis for this. So all state authorities get used to use this method, using circulars, some regulations instead of act of parliament to restrict freedom of expression and other rights. And I am afraid, even after pandemic, this might stay as a common practice for administration, because nobody can question this new methodology, because they say, okay, to save our health, we should excuse this arbitrariness, vagueness in the implementation of the law. This is the first thing. Secondly, the government used pandemic as a chance to impose more restriction on opposition and minority groups. There have been a lot of new investigations, prosecutions against the opposition, mainly pro-Kurdish groups and mayors, as you know. But also, the government used this as an opportunity to pass some controversial acts from the parliament. One of them is attorneyship law. There was no debate in society about the need of lawyers for such a amendment, and there was no real discussion at the parliament about the necessity of the amendment. But the government quickly passed this from the parliament because the agenda of the people has changed after the disease. So it's easier to do things quickly at the parliament. And finally, about the positive duties of the government, we don't know, as in Pakistan, we don't know how many people, how many students do have really access to this online education system. And what are the impacts of this new method of education on students? We don't know how it's going on national education system. We don't know how would be the effect on university and academia. There's no transparency about the results. So I think this will create more division and inequality in the society in the long run, because we don't know how long the pandemic will continue and how long students will have to stay at home. And Turkish government's strategy has been to keep students at home while opening malls. And that's why we don't know whether this will change in the coming months, because as you know, the winter is coming, and even the experts working for the government have concerns about the increase of the pandemic during winter time. So I think this will cause more inequality problems in between social groups, minorities, ethnic groups, and others. So without a strategy to tackle with this problem, I think it's quite difficult to assess the real impact of the disease in Turkey.
Thank you, Nighat. Thank you, Kerem. And now I want to turn to the audience, because we already have questions coming up. And please, to the audience, do send us your questions, and I will pose them to our panelists. And first question is that access to prominent online dating apps such as Grindr, I'm sorry, I don't know these, so I feel really bad. I have no idea about dating apps, so I don't know how they're pronounced. But Gebile Hornet has been blocked recently in Turkey. I'm sorry, I feel so bad now. So out of date. So what does the field of digital rights tell us about the rights of what does the field of digital rights tell us about digital rights in general as a space of socialization and activism from the perspective of the LGBTI people?
Okay, I mean, Grindr was blocked in Turkey about 3-4 years ago, and I think it was in 2016, because we brought an individual application to the Constitutional Court on behalf of gay human rights activists, and the case is still pending. And I think the reason for the Constitutional Court not to decide in this case is that if they reject the case, it will be accepted by the European Court of Human Rights. But if they accept the case, and if they decide to find a violation in that case, the Constitutional Court might be blamed as, I don't know, traitor, or I can't find a word for this, because LGBTI rights cannot be categorized as terrorists, but I'm sure that the pro-government media would find something on this. So in that case, in the Grindr case, we didn't only requested a violation of Article 8, right to privacy, but we also asked for a violation of discrimination, Article 14 of the Convention, because that app was blocked on the ground that it was a prostitution app. And we argued that if you are a heterosexual and if you use an application like Tinder, it's not seen as a prostitution. But if you are gay and if you use Grindr or Hornet, then it's seen as a tool for prostitution. And I think this is an insult to human dignity of LGBTI people. So yes, this is a digital right issue, but it's also a human dignity case. And our case is still pending before the Constitutional Court. Even if the Constitutional Court decides in favor of the applicant, my expectation that it will not deal with this human dignity part of the application, but it should. So blocking apps that is used by LGBTI people is I think, not just a digital right thing, but an anti-discrimination issue.
Nighat, what do you think? This was a question for both of you, so.
Yeah, it's interesting that whatever we talk about it, there are so many similarities, ridiculously so many similarities. So in September this year, again, the government banned Tinder, Grindr, and other 3 dating apps in Pakistan. People here cannot even talk about sexual minorities because even from the beginning, though, those are criminalized under the under the penal code. But these dating apps, I think it's really important for government and the regulatory bodies to understand how young people are using online spaces. It's interesting to see that many young women, they wrote different articles, and they spoke to international media also, that how these dating apps were provided somewhat open space to them. And again, there is a huge class issue here, that even women who were speaking with the media still they have a privilege to use those apps. I mean, a lot of women gender non-binary people cannot even use those apps because they are not allowed to. So, and I don't think that anyone has gone to the court and challenged the banning of dating apps, because from the outset, it's an issue that not many people want to touch upon because of the whole notion around morality and values cover the ban of dating apps. I mean, people can go to the court to challenge the ban against a gaming app or TikTok, for instance. But for these, anyone who will go, the first question that might arise is questioning their morality. And I think this whole business around morality and obscenity is just so complicated in Pakistani society that people just don't want to touch anything in which other people, especially powerful actors, question their own character. So I think there's this thing that is happening in the country. But Tinder basically spoke to the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority and monitor our content and see, how we can remove the immoral sort of content. So Kerem mentioned around the business around prostitution and so there is this kind of conversation that is also going on, that it's actually these kind of apps are ruining the social fabric of our society.
So our next question is quotation from Sacha Baron Cohen, and he had a statement, the actor: freedom of expression does not mean freedom of access. Unfortunately, no matter what we do, there will be racist, sexist, anti-Semitic child molesters. But we can agree that there will be a free platform for. We can agree that it's a free platform for zealots and pedophiles to glorify their views and give their victims easier access. We shouldn't. What do you think about this? The guest from our audience asks, indeed, what's the trade-off between freedom of access and freedom of expression, and freedom of how to tackle all of this difficult equation when internet becomes really something threatening for minorities, for children, for disadvantaged groups? What do you think about that? So, Kerem, you first.
Yeah, so...
okay.
Oh, no, please go on.
Okay,
no, I just wanted to say that there has always been a gray, line between freedom of expression and then all the issues that one of our audiences have mentioned. I think for me, it's very important to like while using child protection, harassment and violence against women, pedophiles, like all these things have been have been used as an excused by our governments to censor content. And I think if our governments call themselves democratic governments, it's very important to and our states have signed international treaties like ICCPR and other international covenants, and we are part of them. And it's important for us to respect those international human rights framework. I think this is what that the international human rights framework around freedom of expression and access to information and association and assembly push basically governments to respect what they have signed on and ratified. Same goes for social media companies as well. So I think if international human rights framework, or even just human rights framework that is enshrined in our constitution, if it won't be center of the stage when governments legislate and make rules and circulars and directives, these issues, the protection of children online or protection of women online, will always be used as an excuse to censor and block content. So I think it's important to raise the bar high when it comes to content moderation, and also look into the international human rights framework. I mean, there is a 3-part legal test, and I think maybe Turkey is more advanced than Pakistan, where we are still grappling with the issues around content moderation, and people who decide on these things are not really aware about the international framework. But I think if the framework is there, I think then we can make proper decisions, and not really ad hoc and arbitrary decisions that we have been seeing that our governments have been taking. To be very honest, what I have seen in Pakistan, that the law that was made in the name of protecting young women and girls is the same law that is being misused to prosecute and arrest journalists and activists. So, the question remains the same, because the women are still facing online violence and harassment, and they're still scared to go to the law enforcement agency. Same is the case with the women journalists. When they report during COVID, there was this incident that happened where women journalists who were reporting about COVID and government's performance, they were labeled as fake journalists, and they were facing so much abuse by different actors from the government and from the supporters of the political parties, that they just decided to take a matter into their own hands and wrote a statement, and then that statement was taken up by the Human Rights Committee of the National Assembly, and they were invited to talk about what kind of abuse that they face online. And honestly, like the kind of hate speech and the sexual slurs that they face every day when they report is something that they were not even able to utter those words in front of the committee. So like the issue is still there, although the law is there. I think we government and the regulatory bodies really need to find a right balance. They just cannot decide on their behest what to block and what not to block, and in the name of protecting women and children and like other marginalized communities.
And you, Kerem?
Freedom of expression is a qualified right. It's not an absolute right. So it might be restricted under certain conditions. But as Nighat said, you should be very cautious in framing how and when you can do it. There are two main reasons to restrict freedom of expression. Either the expression leads to an act that harms people, like inciting violence. You speak, and then because of your speech, there's a risk that a person can commit a crime against another. This is not the speech, but the act, and the connection between the speech and the act justifies the restriction. Secondly, the speech itself can be harmful. So you, rather than to stop the act, you might have to control the speech. So especially when it comes to pedophilia, the speech, not only the act following it, is restricted. But if the question is whether should we allow people to discuss these issues in between each other, I think this is the hard case. I guess everybody will say that, okay, I'm against the abuse of children through social media or at digital platforms. But what about discussing the limits of restriction? So I'm, of course, supporting protecting children. But the problem is, while the government claims protecting children from certain content, generally obscene, they interfere with the privacy of people. In Turkey, I already said, the reason of the enactment of this law was to protect children. But in reality, it became a tool for the government to interfere with the privacy of the adult people. In 2011, this was one of our first cases. Playboy was banned in Turkey. And we applied to the administrative court, and our case is still pending at the constitutional court after a decade. We argued that, okay, you might protect children from obscene content, but you cannot interfere our private life while doing this. So I think the thin line, protecting children and interfering with privacy, should be drawn very carefully. So yes, we can ban some content to protect children, especially when the pedophilia is the subject, but we should refrain from interfering private life of people while doing this. So I think this suggestion, we shouldn't provide a platform to pedophiles, but we shouldn't interfere with private life of adults in the name of protecting children. I think, at least for Turkey, this second prevails over the first one, because there is no tolerance to pedophilia in Turkey. Of course, there are hidden stories going on, but no one supports pedophilia, but it is being used to interfere with freedom of expression and right to privacy. And when you interfere with a qualified right, you should strike a balance between rights. Which one prevails over? There are ways to protect children while respecting right to privacy, and I think this should be the way that we should follow.
Yes, and we have a question, our final question from the audience, but if they have other questions, they can still ask. It's for Nighat. It's especially a question about the internal politics, domestic politics of Pakistan. And our guest is asking, Pakistan Movement for Justice, the current ruling party of Pakistan, was seen perceived as a relatively liberal party before the elections. But after the elections, the PTI government implemented restrictions against rights, as you have mentioned. We have experienced a similar process in Turkey, and I wonder if Pakistani users and citizens in general blame PTI for that. Would the current situation change their political decisions in the next elections? So, what do you think?
So, yeah, I think it's interesting to see how so I personally have never seen PTI as a progressive liberal party, even when they were struggling to come into a government. But I never imagined that during this government how a lot of restrictions will be imposed on mainstream media, and and prosecution of journalists, and arrests of journalists and activists, and how self censorship and censorship will be so prevalent. So I'm not sure if this will be changed, but I am definitely progressive circles in the country are not happy with the decisions that the government is taking around, for instance, single national curriculum, right? It's basically one curriculum for all Pakistan, where and there are like several complications around that. It actually started a huge debate in the country, and that also happened during COVID. So really not sure that this current situation will change after the next election, but I also don't, there were so many hopes with this government by the young people, because many of them, and including myself, we are sick and tired of dynastic politics, where two families have access to the government. So when one wins, the other one loses, and when the other one loses, the another one wins, and they're like just two faces that you see time and again. So their fathers, and then their children, and now their children. So there were so many hopes with this government, but I feel that the government is struggling with the governance issues because of no prior experience, and it also feels that they are not really independent in taking decisions that they are taking. So they're like their people have so many grievances. The inflation rate is so high at the moment, and not every decision that the government takes, people are happy with it. But I'm also not sure if the situation will change after elections. I mean, the law that I'm talking about, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, that was enacted by the previous government. It was not PTI, and that previous government is now fighting against this current government, and there is a street politics that is going on by all the opposition parties in Pakistan. But at the same time, I feel when political parties are in opposition, they are much more active and in support of the human rights. And when they get into a government, they suddenly forget about human rights and about the promises that they had made with the different stakeholders and with the citizens, and their priorities change. And we have seen with different governments in Pakistan, Yeah, but I don't know if the after elections, and elections are still far. The current political scenario is a little little uncertain. So we really don't know what will happen in next few months, but still not really that shaky. The government doesn't seem this shaky, but not many people are happy with the decisions that they have taken and are taking still.
We have come to the end of our time. Thank you so much for your contributions, but I'll have last words from you, last but not least, of course, because as activists such as yourself, the ones in the audience as well, I'm sure we have very valuable, prominent guests as our audience. So please give us a message of hope, but maybe let's not get so cheesy and talk about hope, but really being also objective, not just trying to be optimistic. How do you think we can utilize the arena of digital rights? What hope you see for the future? And also, we all try to tackle very difficult questions, very dire abuses of rights. So in our panel, so please give us perhaps as good examples or as a message for the future. Just give us your final thoughts.
Shall I start this time?
Why not?
All right, okay. One of these digital conferences, a young human rights defender asked me, what should I do as a human rights defender? I told him that he should be patient. I think the first thing that we need to be is being patient, because in the world that we live, we shouldn't wait quick results in our struggle. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think we shouldn't be consequentialists. In most of the cases that we fight for, there will be no positive consequence, but we will be still doing the good thing. So I think even if I'm not optimist, I still believe that there are a lot of things to do, and the good intent is the reason to do that, not the consequence. One day we might get some result from what we do. Several times we had, but it didn't improve the situation. As you mentioned, Sezin, at the beginning, in Twitter, YouTube cases, we won, but things are not better than at the days when they were blocked. But what I think is that we did the right thing, and it's best way to do the right thing again and again, even when you lose it. So digital rights perspective, this is the place where we can feel the freedom the most, comparing to the other fields. That's why the life is transferred to the digital life. It was already like this, but due to pandemic, this transfer was accelerated. And I think we will have options and opportunities in the digital life to share our views, to organize, to work together, to strengthen human rights struggle. This is my message.
Thank you, Kerem. And the people like you really make a difference, because we're still tweeting, and this current panel has been broadcast on YouTube, so we can be using them. So people like you make, and Nighat, make big changes, actually. So Nighat, on to you.
I'll echo what Kerem has said. It's not a struggle of one day, or do not expect that the change will happen over the night. One has to be patient. When I started working on digital rights, people used to say, even the human rights activists used to tell me, what are you about? We are still struggling for human rights in the offline spaces, and you are talking about some like alien thing, digital rights. And I just like stayed true to my mission. And now I can see that it's not just one person, but then there are many people who are talking about digital rights, and it's their mission to make online spaces safer and open for everyone, for all. But at the same time, I think I'm happy to see, like even after so much restrictions and shutdowns, and people still raise their voice online, even after like women who have spoken up for under Me Too. They are facing defamation suits, the cyber criminal charges, cyber criminal defamation. Still, younger women are speaking up against their perpetrators and around sexual harassment. There are still people who are raising a lot of issues. They are gathering online, so actually using their right to association and assembly. And just yesterday, in a high profile case in the Supreme Court, two judges issued their dissenting note. And in one of the dissenting note is mostly talking about surveillance and right to privacy. And this is for the very first time that any superior court talks about the right to privacy and against mass surveillance of different powerful actors at such a length. So for me, these small little successes are actually our hope. And I think we need to keep fighting for our spaces, whether they are offline or online. Losing hope is not an option for us at all. So just wanted to end here.
Well, thank you all, and thank you to the Truth Memory Justice Center for providing us this platform for this panel. It was, in my view, a really timely discussion regarding digital rights, as we are all going digital these days. And I want to thank all the participants for being with us this afternoon. Also, Kerem Çiftçioğlu and Burcu Bingöl'lü behind the scenes. Thank you. Thank you very much.